I'm a big fan of minimalism in design, in software architecture, and in product design, which means that I got very interested when I got an article from Architecture Weekly called Addition by Subtraction in Software Design. We're gonna review this and comment on it. Welcome back to Think Design Work Smart. I'm Alex Bolboacă and I'm coming at you from the Mosaic Work Studio, and today what we have is an article from Architecture Weekly published on July 6, 2026. The author is Oskar Dudycz, I think. Hopefully I'm pronouncing it right. And the title is Addition by Subtraction in Software Design, on how addition can lower the value of your software and subtraction increase it. Let's read through this article and react to it. I want it all and I want it now. This is not only a Freddie Mercury code, but also too often a general plan for our software product. The picture tells more than words, so here it is, the typical product with design. Yeah. An exaggerated Swiss Army knife. And well, that's probably not what our user wanted. They might just want a sharper steak knife or something more like, yeah, very nice knife. German stainless steel serrated steak knife set. Okay, I could geek around about knives for a while, but I'm just gonna stop and continue. I like to cook, and knives are really good. When it comes to cooking, it's the best tool you have. So I'm also to blame. I'm falling into precisely the same trap too often. Like recently while working on Strictland, the contract testing library I announced in the previous article. The idea behind it is to detect messy schema drift easily. You write such a test, and there's a description of a test, something like message contract or specification, given the order placed with a few fields. When serialized, then contract is unchanged. Okay. It serializes the message, stores the payload inside the same Git repository as the test. All right. So it's basically golden master testing library, but for contracts. Or if you know approval testing, it's similar, but approval testing is an application of the golden master technique. Thanks to that, you can keep it close and detect contract changes during the review by looking at the change files. Initially, files were kept in the same folder as the test file. That made it accessible, as you don't need to jump from one folder to another and see related test files. The file was named by message type class name, so in this case it would be orderplace.approve.text. Simple, but what if someone adds multiple tests trying to store different snapshots for the same message type? Multiple test files dispersed across different folders that test the same message type. Multiple message types across different module packages with the same name. Multiple tests for different message type versions and variants. Example with all fields, but with only required fields, etc. Right. And we are often faced with this dilemma, right? Because you get to the point where you start with something simple, but then you realize that you have all kinds of combinations between things and you'd like to change that somehow. And it doesn't. That's when you start making design decisions. And the easiest, or let's say the ones that requires less thought is, okay, let's add some more features. But you should also consider what is the goal of your product and just stay within that goal. All of that is solvable by some conventions, but what if you are an open source library creator like me? Then you can assume the same type of thinking, level of tidiness or knowledge of your users. You should be the one to take on the pain and make your users' life easier. And guess what? That applies not only to open source, but also to other products. Taking the pain and helping users can be interpreted as an attempt to please everyone, which translates to the mentioned earlier. I want it all, and I want it now. That's what I tried to do. I decided to add selectable storage layouts strategies. Oh boy. And you see how this makes everything more complicated, because if you are in the default context, the only thing that you want is just to initialize things and for the library to start working. If you need to learn about the strategy for selectable storage layouts, then it's becoming very complicated. Okay, let's go back to it. So that's what I tried to do. I decided to add selectable storage layout strategies near the test file, so similar to the one we had, in the nested folder near the test file, similar but separating the snapshot files from tests, in the root folder, putting it close to the root folder, keeping snapshots together. And selectable storage layout strategies were not enough for me. I also wanted to add various grouping strategies where one could select whether they want to group message snapshots by message time name, test files and their names, or just apply no grouping. It sounded smart to me, and hell, with GenAI I wouldn't even need to fight with it, as my friend Claude would do it for me. Right. Right. Now, selectable storage layout strategy should sound enough as a warning to me, and various grouping strategies should ring a loud alarm bell. Yes, it should. When you are designing things, these are signs of over-complication, and you should pull away from that because it's getting very bad very quickly. But it didn't. I planned how to do it and started the implementation. And I have to say, sometimes this happens. You implement it, you realize it's too complicated, and you take it back. And it's easier now with Claude code and other large language, well, GenAI coding assistants. A few iterations later, the permutations of those various strategies started to pile up. Some of them were just hard to do, some were conflicting, and most of them weren't even useful. Yes. Examples. I decided to make all files follow the unified format message time name, .version, .variant, .snap, .approved, .extension. And that's fine, but then what to use as the message type name? Class name? Fine, but what about a flat layout or grouping by message time name with multiple messages of the same name? Okay, and so on. So basically, you get a bunch of complication, right? And we don't have to read through all of this to realize that you have all these kinds of permutations. Whenever you have multiple strategies in place, they start to collide unless they are orthogonal, and then you don't care about them. But these weren't orthogonal. I decided to run a sanity check I should have done earlier, better later than too late. The discussion inside my head looked more or less like this. Before reading through this, I think one thing that I like to do is with Claude to always ask. So let's say I would be doing something like this. I would state the problem first. So we have this problem. It's possible that we'll get clashes and so on. What are the options? And then we'll get a bunch of options. And then I will start asking, okay, but which of these are actually useful? And aren't we overcomplicating? So from time to time, I'm doing this double check. And I think in general, it's good whenever you work with GenAI assistants, first to generate ideas, and then to remove some of the ideas and to double check, is this too complicated? Could it be simpler? Are we trying to fix a problem that doesn't exist? And so on. And I prefer solving problems once they came up. In general, that's my stance. But sometimes, okay, you know that some problems will come up and you need to solve those as well beforehand. But let's go back to the discussion inside his head. Me was the actual goal of this library. I, so it's me and I. I, to detect message schema drift. Me, okay, then do I need to build a snapshot library? I, to some degree, I'm using snapshot comparison to detect the drift. Me, sure, but I probably don't need to cover all the cases the generic snapshot library has to write. I, right. Me, okay, so what's our bet for users? Are they advanced or just beginning the journey? I, at the beginning, obviously. Me, then I should help them set a sane default and guide them. Yeah, exactly what I was saying. Too often we are trying to solve all the problems instead of just focusing on the current problem. And it's easier to do with software, and it's even more tempting to do with GenAI because you can do it quickly. But it messes up the system for users and for yourself in terms of code. Me, then I should help them set the same default and guide them, especially since this is the early phase of this library. I haven't yet received much feedback. Yes. I agreed, maybe we could start then with the recommended layout and grouping and then gather feedback. I can add more strategies as needed. That sounds like an obvious thing to do, but it requires pausing to find the time to evaluate our assumptions. Yes, yes, and yes. This is something that we don't do enough. And my guess is because first in university, you are given a bunch of problems and asked to solve them. And when you get hired in a professional environment, you are given tasks or requirements, documentation, and asked to implement it. We don't practice that much problem solving, which is what we will actually need for effective use of AI assistants. We shouldn't always be mad at ourselves for not predicting everything earlier, of course. So design is an iterative process. You need to go beyond the level of complexity in order to figure out where it is, well, the right level of complexity, the Goldilocks level of complexity, let's call it. You need to go beyond that in order to be able to pull back and figure where it actually is. Because software can solve a lot of things, but you cannot solve everything with one piece of software. So we shouldn't always be mad at ourselves for not predicting everything earlier. You should never be mad at yourself for not predicting things earlier. I don't think you should. It's good when you found it, learn from it, and next time you'll know better. But there's absolutely no reason to get mad at yourself because you haven't predicted it. Some stuff is just hard to predict, of course. Personally, I usually see some steps after I try to implement them. That's normal. That's precisely what's happening. The thing is, we as software developers, we don't have enough design training. Designers that go to design school, they learn this stuff. This is normal. This is how design is done. But we somehow expect to get it right before we see it. It's not how it happens. You have the interplay between what you're thinking, what you're implementing, and how it's used. And you need to get into this feedback loop. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You cannot see every single detail before starting. There are also the steps I explained in the article about the OODA loop. Okay, maybe we'll look at this later. We should observe, this is the intake of raw unfiltered information in our world, looking at the state of the system. Orient, most critical and difficult stage, where we filter our observations to experience, culture and technical knowledge. Decide, based on orientation, formulate a hypothesis. Act, we execute, rinse and repeat. If we think about it this way, the time spent considering those various cases is not wasted. Yes, it's not. You have to figure out what to remove from your product before you start implementing. Well, let me rephrase that. You have to try to figure out what to remove from your product before you start implementing. You might actually figure it out when you implement it, and that's also good because you figured it out. But ideally you do this before, but then you need experience, knowledge, a certain level, and maybe you're working on a problem you haven't worked on before. Maybe you're using a technology in a new way. Maybe you're using a new technology. Who knows? There are so many different things that can pull you into the direction of implementing these things and then figuring it out. It's similar with the anti-requirement exercise described by Andreas Holland and David Bocche. I don't know this one, but it sounds interesting. And Barry O'Reilly, Residuality Theory. We have a video on this. Residuality Theory solves architecture. It's a very interesting one. We gather numerous needs and ideas about our product evolution and see what sticks and what remains. Not all ideas will be great, some will be bad, but that doesn't matter. It gives us food for thought. Still, we can't forget about the most important part, subtraction. We need to subtract all the stuff that's not needed, leaving only the useful residues, the one that solves the main goal. For my case, I realized that if I choose the single strategy, it will organize my contract into the root test folder, like this, okay? By nesting my message type and full path and grouping by contract name, I'm not only keeping snapshots, but also creating a contract registry. So this subtraction of some features not only gave me focus on the specific scenario, but also enabled me to create scenarios that I would actually like to have eventually. For instance, keep the message schema in the same folder as nation, mark down docs of the message, having defined the folder structure, generate the documentation, check dependency, to use is that. That led me to conclude the following two rules. The addition of imaginary features subtracts the actual value. The subtraction of imaginary features adds the actual value. Okay, so that's really interesting. I like to rephrase it a little bit. It's good to have constraints for your design. If you start with a minimalistic approach, which is the one that I like, you already start with the mindset of removing things. And you're already careful. Whenever you are tempted to add something new, you're always wondering, okay, can't I solve that with what I have? Or can this just be, a different way of organizing, and I'm just using the same tool but differently? There are often cases when you realize that you've already solved the problem, and maybe it's not in the best way, in the easiest way, but it's also not the most common problem that the user will be facing. And you already have a solution, not the best one, but you have one, and why not? That's just great. What's the lesson then? We're not wasting time on building too slowly, we're wasting time on building stuff that doesn't matter. Yes. All those useless features we imagine without evaluating them with people are a wasted opportunity to deliver better for them. And now, this was an exercise at one person working on a tool. But if you take this in an enterprise, in a large organization, doing the exact same exercise means countless hours spent on setting meetings, writing documents, writing emails, creating slides, going into the meeting, presenting stuff, discussing with 4 or 5 people in a meeting, and repeating this again and again until you really realize, oh, actually we don't need this. So imagine how much you could remove by just saying, this is not the problem that we're trying to solve, or this is not the main problem that we're trying to solve, or this is not the right way or this is not the way to solve this problem because it doesn't fit the design pillars that we defined. That's just what it can be. So it's much easier to do that. It optimizes everything if you can remove things instead of trying to solve everything. Nowadays with LLMs, it's tempting to rush into implementation and add every feature we can imagine. That's never free. We're increasing the cognitive load for our users and also for us. We waste time or stuff that doesn't matter and are constantly distracted. So where I think it can help is if you do this as a prototype, not as the final implementation. So in the case of an enterprise, like I was discussing previously, let's say you get a huge requirements document and then you say, okay, let's use LLMs to just generate a prototype for this and see how it might look like. And then you work with that prototype to figure out what to remove. And you demonstrate to your users, to your business, the people who ask features from you, you demonstrate how you can solve the same problem in different ways because it's much more concrete than just explaining it in text and so on. But the key here is prototype, not production implementation. Yet if we don't do sanity checks, trying things in a proof of concept way can be a big multiplier if we stop after that and rethink. Yeah, exactly what I would say. I'd still advocate doing a sanity check earlier than I did in the described scenario and thinking first, but not all can be foreseen like that. Yeah. So generate as many ideas as you can. Try to think about how they mesh together, trade-offs, cost of adding them, cost of removing them, cost of changing your mind. This is design. You know, we are learning design now, which is good, but it's still surprising. Well, it's not surprising, but it's okay. It's not great that we need to learn design, that we are so focused in our world that we were focusing too much on syntax and programming languages and so on, and not on design. So generate ideas, try to think how they mesh together, trade-offs, cost of adding, cost of removing, cost of change, define potential solutions, stop the addition phase and rethink what you came up with. Ask yourself what you're building, what the actual goal is, start the subtraction phase and cut as much as you can on the stuff that's actually not needed. Of course, don't drop ideas. Remember, the quantification is subjective. Deliver a simple solution that will give you enough optionality to change your mind. Send it wild and gather feedback. And that's precisely what I did. I just released Strictland 040 and will plan the next steps based on user feedback. Great. So what have we learned from this article? We learned that we need to practice design, and part of the design, what he's actually describing here is a process for design that is well known. Is generate ideas, create a solution, and then collapse those ideas. It's a well-known form in design, well, in thinking design. I'm trying to avoid the term design thinking because that means something specific. What I'm talking about is design as it is applied in general to multiple disciplines, to industrial design, web design, movies, everything. Okay. So, what do you think about this? Let us know in the comments. We love comments and we can't wait to have some more conversations with you. Thank you kindly for the view, and until next time, remember to think, design, and work smart. See you next Saturday.